The third of our facility focus ARC Facilities webinar series is on spotlighting mobile access to building information for emergency preparedness. And this is going to be presented again by our awesome speaker, Robin Wijesaria. So Robin, I'm going to go ahead and hand it over to you.
Fabulous. Thank you so much, Indira, for the great introduction. Folks, thank you so much for joining in on this third session of the Facility Focus webinar. Like Indira said, this is our third session, focusing and highlighting your access to building information for the goals of emergency preparedness and response. If you had tuned into some of our previous sessions, we do have those recordings as well. If you had missed those, we had spoken about the building plan scavenger hunt of what it takes to find MEPs in the modern day in different formats, as well as a second session on shutoffs and being able to have instant access to those mappings of critical water, power, gas, medical gas shutoffs throughout your properties and campus, inside and out. But today I want to highlight emergency preparedness. So I want to start off really quickly with just a quick question to start getting an idea of where it is on an emergency perspective is critical and important for you and your team. So I'll give you a few seconds, go ahead and look at those, pick some answers, and I want to make sure that I have a good grasp and an idea of what it is that you guys are looking at. Everyone to come in here and throw in some responses. Those who are just joining in, I'm just putting up a quick poll question, getting an idea of those areas of focus. Fabulous. I think that's a good amount of time, Indira. If you want to take a look at some of these results, we can start to see where some of that interest lies right now as we start the session. Fabulous. So it's that on the go, that mobile side, the ability to pull up and share resources is a priority. So perfect, folks. Thank you so much for helping me to understand that. And let's see how we can dive in. And let me cover a little bit about what I will be speaking about today. So like you saw in those options, that mobile access to that emergency equipment, organized life safety plans, the ability to share these with first responders, and more importantly, the on-the-go access. You're going to hear me time and time again mention two big names: access and time. I believe that those are some of the biggest priorities that come into play from an emergency response and emergency preparedness perspective, and you'll see me highlight those throughout the session today. So let's dive into things. What we often hear from what I hear at trade shows, meeting with facility and safety teams, is that a challenge that is present is the ability to have access to all of the up-to-date, whether it's emergency plans, emergency locations of shutoffs, building plans. That information can live in a lot of different areas, whether it's in physical plans, as you have kind of generational and legacy information. It could be in digital format as you get some of those newer plans from GCs and architects in the last few years. And then there's also the mixed match of where I have it in both formats of physical and digital. And if you remember from my first session of the scavenger hunt for building plans, of what the challenges that creates from a perspective of access to you and your teams. And all of this ability to find and share this information is all in the goal of supporting your business continuity, your ability to keep not only your buildings and your property safe, but more importantly, the people within there, whether it's students. I see lots of K through 12 and higher ed individuals on here from a student and teacher perspective, but also I see some healthcare individuals as well from a patient perspective as well. Those are the people that we continue to serve day in and day out. So in that regard, access is all in the goal of supporting them on that side. So the modern day now is that facilities and safety teams are constantly on the move. They're on the go. They're responding to whether it's preventative maintenance, corrective issues, or in an emergency sense, they're always out there in the field. And that poses a challenge a lot of the time when information is spread out. It's centralized in just a shared drive on a computer that needs to be accessed from a desktop on a property, or it's in a physical plan room that's only located at one of the campuses. I call that kind of the information bottleneck. And all of that kind of can influence and impact your response time. And from the conversations that I've had with facilities and safety teams, and as well as first responders, is that timely intervention is what is one of the main supporters of minimizing risk. And that comes, like I mentioned in the beginning, time and access, the ability to respond in quick time or the ability to quickly access that information will play a huge role. I just had spoken to someone earlier on in the springtime from a K through 12 campus here in California that had experienced a gas leak. They had all of their site plans, their MEPs, all of those locations digitally. They had gone through that digitization process and had it on their shared drive. But once they evacuated the building, they had no access to that information. They couldn't pull it up from the exterior of the building to pass along to first responders. And because of that, school had to be excused for the day because of the time it spent to resolve that issue. These are just things I want you to continue to consider as you look to future-proof and future plan from an emergency response and an emergency preparedness perspective. But one thing that continues to add a challenge to that information bottleneck is the fact that information can be kind of an overload at times. Like you see here, there are lots of properties out there with decades of renovation history, of changes to that building, whether it's in physical form, like you see here with a plan room with multiple sets of sheets and renovations, or it could be even on the digital side. But a story that I had heard is that not only do properties change, but people change. You may have tenured staff that has been there throughout the lifetime of the building and the property, seeing those renovations occur. And I like to call them walking encyclopedias because they know that information through and through and minimally have to refer to the plans. But what I had heard from this hospital over in the Northeast was that since COVID, that they saw a big retirement of their tenured staff, those who had been there for decades of time. Those new technicians who came in, they're poised, they're experienced, they have still decades of facility experience, but they were brand new to that building. They didn't have a centralized place to go and absorb and learn the historical changes of the building, to understand how the building truly now sits through all of those renovations. And that can pose a challenge to them of being able to be accurate with their inputs, as well as being on a kind of an active roster from the get-go. And whether it's physical plans or now moving into the digital age, there are a challenge on both sides. You can maybe have a physical plan room that is harder to find information just because of the sheer volume. But when you scan it, you can also get into a challenge of a digital mess with different naming conventions of, just like you see here on the left, as-built 1, as-built 2. You're clicking through individual PDFs, still trying to find information. That influences your time to be able to respond to accurate information. Your ability to search through those Adobe files can also be a challenge and influence time. So I want to bring in the perspective of one of our colleagues over at the College of Sequoias, Byron Woods. He shared a great piece of information of what has been important for him to streamline his not only facility, but emergency response has been through access mobily. The campuses that he manages are quite spread out geographically. So during weekends, there are seldom many people on the campus to be able to respond, whether it may be a custodian, a security guard. But even in the instance of an emergency, whether he's right there on site or an hour and a half away, he's still able to pull up a lot of that information on the go from his mobile device and share it with the people who need it. So this has been an instance where he has really taken it upon himself to put things mobily and have that accessible. Because from what we know and what you see is emergencies never happen when they're convenient. They don't happen sometimes at the 9 to 5 during the work week when everyone's there to be able to respond. They happen on Christmas Eve, on weekends, at 2 in the morning at night when no one's on site. These are when problems and accidents occur. So being able to find and access and share that information with those on site is where time makes a difference. And I want to go through an example of exactly that, of where time and seconds really made an impact on, one, preserving a building, but also keeping staff and teams safe. So This was a K through 12 school that had a rooftop fire where an AC unit had caught fire on a weekend. So luckily, no students were present, but that also posed a challenge is that there was no facility technician or safety personnel on site to quickly respond or share that information. So as first responders pull up onto the site, they know that it's a unit on fire, it's an electrical fire, they need to turn power off. They're able to reach out to the school on their emergency number and get in contact with that on-call technician. And to give you a glimpse into that on-call technician, they were brand new. They didn't have the full volume and understanding of the property to know all the intricate details of, oh, if that unit's affected, it's this breaker right here, this panel. That wealth of knowledge really comes into play with experience, but they had mobile access to a lot of that building information and could take that historic information and bring it right up in there. So as they're working with the fire chief and incident commander, they were able to share accurate floor plans with routes to be able to go through to the electrical panel to turn power off to that unit so they could put out the fire. Not only where is that panel, which breaker, the exact one that needs to be found and turned off. And you can imagine the challenge that's posed as there's smoke filling this room of being able to find that accurate information really made a difference. All of this information was shared via text mobilely to those who were on site, even if that on-call technician wasn't there. They were able to share this information and have access to that content. So like this building plan route, showing it to the map, the exact electrical panel with that breaker, as well as then texting that to them. This is an example, folks, where access made a difference. And this is kind of the concept that I'm getting to of smart building technology, now being in the digital age of being able to have mobile first access where there's a single source of truth when it comes to finding and relaying information in real time, whether that's accurate plans, locations of assets like water shutoffs or isolations, or those emergency contacts of those who need to be reached out to in the event of an emergency. So I want to give you a quick glimpse into this of what it would look like to have mobile access to this. And I challenge you on this perspective. Look internally, look back into your history of what you've done with your facility and with your team. Where were there instances, whether it's a sprinkler line that broke during a winter or an equipment failure, or if you're in Florida and you've been a victim to the number of hurricanes over the last few years, where could have access helped and supported you in mitigating those challenges? So I'm going to take a pause there, move away from the presentation, and show you what a mobile aspect could look like when it comes to emergency information. Right now, folks, I'm sharing my screen from my iPad, but this is type of a mobile information that you want to be able to pull up not only from an iPad, but from a phone, from a computer at a workstation. This is the route we're trying to move to. So as I go in there, having the ability to see all my different sites, whether it's broken up by campus, if I have one spread across a big geographic plane, if there's multiple buildings within my campuses, how do I really pinpoint and zoom in on the information that's critical and important to me in a emergency preparedness perspective, but also in an emergency response? So for this example, I'm diving into now a specific campus and now a specific building, building number 4. And this is where I want to always have immediate access to this kind of content, whether it's emergency plans of the exact steps and the exact plans and routes that we should take in the event of one of these emergencies, whether it is the day and age of active shooters of what do we do in this instant, who do we call, where do we go, if there's a fire, a flood, or a leak, what do we do, who do we contact? This is all information that is now readily accessible from your fingertips on your mobile device, whether this is in a school for a teacher to pull up or at a hospital for a facility director to have access to. This is how quick and easy that information should be able to be found. Same goes for some of the other ones you see here at the top of evacuation routes. Now we're in a campus, we are in a building, and now we can do it by floor. So this is how you can continue to zoom in and magnify the different information that you need from an emergency perspective. But I want to dive into a little bit to shutoffs from an emergency perspective. And I first want to take a pause and get a little bit of feedback from you and your team. Where do you go right now for emergency information regarding shutoffs for things of water, power, gas? Where do you find that information nowadays? I'll give you guys a few minutes to, or a few seconds to kind of take a look at that. I'm really interested to see where it is now that building information for shutoffs are located. Seconds. I hope everyone is having a great day so far as we enjoy it. It's a Wednesday. I'm here in the Bay Area. It's getting hot and warm still, but hopefully weather by you is nice and pretty. Let's take a look at some of these responses. Okay, we're going into the building plans. Our senior team members are the ones that really know, and other awesome. Thank you everyone for those great responses. This is how I want to be able to help you and your teams with accessing things of shutoffs, a single source of truth when it comes to emergency information regarding things of water, power, gas for my healthcare individuals out there, things of medical gas, oxygen, nitrogen. Taking a look now here at this map of being able to visualize where exactly all my critical shutoffs are for all the variety of assets that I have, being able to filter through to say, okay, I want to focus in on my water isolations, not only the water shutoff to the main part of the building that will turn everything off, maybe what it controls from these floors to as well as the parking garage here and where it's located. This may be critical to you if for a major incident of turning water off to the whole property. Where do we go for that? But maybe it's as small as, okay, there's an incident and a leak from a sprinkler line in the southwest corner. We just need to isolate that and not influence everything else in the building. Where do we go and zoom in to find that kind of information? Okay, it's in a ceiling tile. This may be something that is in a building plan that is in our plan room, or it's in our shared drive. Let's open up the PDFs and try and find it. That is time spent looking for that. And as many people here on here know, water always finds a way. And that's a line that I have been taught from Mr. David Trask, a colleague of mine, is that water always finds a way. And especially when it's coming out at 10, 20, 30 gallons per minute, those are seconds that count in order to preventing something from being a mop and bucket issue to now replacing floor tiles, ceiling grids, or waters going into multiple floors. But now I know, okay, this water isolation is above this ceiling tile. It controls the west wing on the first floor. That is quick information that I can search for and find and even share with my team. So in the event of a power incident or a water incident, and I, for example, may be the facility technician on a weekend and I'm off site, but there's a custodian who is there who noticed the leak, I can go ahead and send this information via text, via email, as a picture, as a PDF. And this is information that's now being streamlined towards the people who are on site in the field so they can have timely intervention and response. So in the meantime, they can mitigate the risk while you and your team have the ability to then show up and respond to any of the other effects. But time wasn't spent traveling to the site, looking for information, going through SharePoint, calling on staff on the weekend, and finding out the answer. This is another area that I continue to focus in on. But water isn't the only area of a shutoff. Things like electrical panels, like you saw in my example with the K through 12 school district, they were able to go through and find that individual panel, know exactly which breaker they needed to shut off to stop that electrical fire. And now they have the ability for the future to continue to update this information of just pressing the plus button, snapping a new picture if they do change some of their index cards, of snapping that new picture, and that information now gets saved and updated to everyone else's device. From an emergency perspective, accuracy is a huge element to this. So if everyone's able to work off of the same accurate information, that's how you're going to mitigate any deviation from the standard operating procedure. But Folks, that's kind of what I wanted to touch on regarding shutoffs. I want to take a step back and kind of do a little bit more on emergency assets, things like fire extinguishers, AEDs, things that are critical for you on the preparedness side as you go through your inspections for these assets. So like you see, emergency assets are everywhere in buildings, and they can range from things like fire extinguisher and AEDs to card sensors, to strobes, to cameras and fire hydrants. All of that information is critical for you. And I know that that is something that you have to do on a compliance side of inspections. Things like fire extinguishers need to be inspected at different cadences. Having a solution to be able to remind you of that, of these are the different assets that need to be inspected on this cadence, can be something to support you and your team from an organization perspective to continue to be proactive. I know that's something that everyone is always trying to get towards, is away from being reactive, but always being on the forefront and being proactive with their information. So whether or not you do your inspections in-house or you work with an outside vendor, this is still information that can be beneficial to them. I can go ahead and share only the defibrillator and the fire extinguisher locations and have a map for that I can now, like I said, email, text to that outside vendor so they know, okay, these are all the assets and where they are in the first floor. Let's make sure we get all the index inspections done on them. You can even add a form to that if you want to have more visibility and accountability to what's being done in the field. You can set up a form that's a PDF form of a step-by-step process of this needs to be done on the AED, of checking the siren, checking the battery, checking that the key is accessible. All of those things can be created in a form that you can have more control over, from a frequency reminder of who gets reminded, who gets approved of it. Those are all aspects from an inspection standpoint that can continue to support you from an emergency preparedness side of things. And this doesn't apply to just fire extinguishers and AEDs. You can have now a full map of all of your cameras so that in the event of an incident that you need to go back and review footage, you can say, okay, these are all of our different camera views. So I know if there's an incident in this area, I know which camera I need to reference. This is, again, where time and access will continue to play a role in your team's ability to enhance your emergency preparedness. And now, taking another step back from our emergency equipment, we can focus in on things like emergency contacts. Who do we reach out to in event of an incident, whether there's hazardous material there, what was in there from an SDS perspective, as well as life safety documentation and floor plans. This is where then you can share this information out with first responders of this is the route you need to take to get to an incident. This is on a preparedness side. From what I heard from different teams, life safety information is critical to them, and they have a lot of historical information as well that is in physical form. Their ability now to digitize that and have smart linking to it, so they are no longer flipping large format sheets. They're no longer scrolling through individual PDFs that are unnamed. They're able to Command F in any document. They're able to see all the different index pages and go directly to that sheet. They're able to do anything of marking up, drawing onto the document, and then sending that directly to the people who need it most. And this goes to them as a PDF, as an image, or even as a link that expires. If you're sending this information out to outside vendors, you can share information to them, but knowing that you have custody over it to bring it back when the project ends or the inspection is over. So folks, these are all aspects from an emergency preparedness standpoint that's critical to have access to support your timely intervention. But things may not lie in a building a lot of the time. Things may lie out in the parking lot, exterior wise. That's where you can always have things of a campus map and things that are exterior to your buildings that are still critical and important to you to know. But that's what I wanted to really highlight here, folks, from a mobile aspect of having access to that. For those like Andrea had just put into the chat, feel free to tap there if you do want to have a more focused session on any of these different aspects or to get your perspective of your facility and your property. Feel free to reference Andira's comment in the chat. But folks, I'm going to hop back in to this presentation and just kind of summarize everything that we had discussed just now when it comes time to emergency preparedness across the board. For one, increasing your emergency access from anywhere at any time plays a huge role. And I continue to say it again, time and access both support emergency preparedness. As you get quicker response, you can have less downtime, and that can influence your business continuity, whether it's a school being able to stay in session and return back, whether it's patients don't need to be evacuated from a certain wing in a hospital, or manufacturing doesn't need to stop production for much longer, because all of those impacts have a financial implication, and timely intervention can definitely support being able to support higher uptime and less downtime. And like I mentioned earlier, water leaks are a perfect perspective on that, and an example of where less time being open and spilling out can be the difference between that mop and bucket versus the floor tile. And lastly, diving through of what it means to have things mobily accessible. I like to use these few words: having a mobile plan room that is a single source of truth. Those are two things that I think are critical. A mobile plan room that has that kind of emergency content that you can quickly and easily tap through from a campus to a building to a floor, and it's accurate and up to date. So as changes are being made on one device, it goes out to everyone else. So they see the new updated emergency contact for the fire and PD liaison. We know who to contact. We know who to reach out to from a hazmat perspective. If there are chemicals in a chemical lab that are spilling, who do we reach out to there? And then the ability to share that information, whether it's a floor plan, a shut off to the security and custodial who's there on a weekend to prevent that water from leaking out more. Or like I showed of a fire extinguisher maps. Where can we send that information to our exterior vendors so they have more visibility and you have more control over what they're doing? That, folks, is what I really wanted to spend time on from an emergency preparedness perspective, and how access and time play a huge role in that. Thank you so much for stopping and listening in. I want to now give you guys the chance to put any questions or comments in the Q&A box right there at the bottom of the Zoom. Feel free to throw any in there, and Andrea will be able to pass those along to me now.
Yep. Thank you so much, Rob. Great demonstration of some of the powerful features of ARC facilities. Actually, I have a question here from Val. Is ARC still accessible when offline?
Yes, that's a great question. Let me quickly just pop out of the application to show you how that looks. If you see that little green check mark there next to my different properties, that means that I have downloaded that information offline. And that's a huge important factor, because if I take my phone and Wi-Fi goes out because of the emergency, I still have access to that content. So yes, you can download this information offline to be able to be pulled up, whether you don't have Wi-Fi, you don't have cellular.
Great, thank you. Another question I have, can I document things besides my life safety equipment, like where my storm drain clean outs are?
Yeah, that's a great question. And those can also play a big role in an emergency sense. If there's lots of snow melt or something and there's blockage there, you can come in here and put in your own site maps or your own floor plans and have them separated out by folder so it doesn't impact your shutoff map. You can have a separate site plan for your different storm drain cleanouts, whether your IT team wants to know where all their access points are. You're able to have configurability for all those different functionalities. Great question.
Awesome. Here's an interesting one. Can you change the colors of the icons, for example, the cameras and the shutoffs?
Yes, absolutely. There can be some customizable things within there. We do have in this application some pre-built pins, but you are able to come in here and create your own pins depending on what it is that you want to track. So When you come in here, you can either select by maybe some of the pre-built ones, but you can also create your own and have that color coding there if you have a better visibility, or you already track things of color coding on different dots. You can also follow that same structure. Yes, great question.
All right, another question here. I'm running my district with a smaller staff since the pandemic. How can I get my already small team to pin all of this stuff?
No, that's a great point. It's poignant as well because this is the day and age where everyone tells us to do more with less. It's a challenge. So with that mentality, like you mentioned, since COVID with smaller teams, how can I give the resources up on my day-to-day to pin those things? For one, you won't have to. With the ARC facility solution, our team with our 140 locations across the country will be able to come and support you to do that mapping for you. So when you do get a login, you are able to have full accuracy and visibility to what's there out in your buildings already.
Follow up to that is how, when you say the team comes out, what do you mean exactly by that?
Yeah, no, that's a good question. So we are able to support teams to do a field verification of these assets. So we will support you on digitizing and organizing your floor plans and as-built, and then support on a physical presence of walking either the inside and the outside, the roofs of your buildings, and dropping those individual pins for those emergency assets, those shutoffs, equipment pieces. Our team will come and field verify those with the location of it, pictures of it, and then work with your team to maybe provide some more context. Like you saw how that water isolation had a description that said it controlled the west wing on the first floor. That's kind of inputs that we can continue to support.
Awesome. Awesome. Okay. Another question is, what are the best practices when it comes to working with my local fire department and police department? How would I use the app information? I'm sorry, how would I use the info in the app to help them?
Great question. That is something that is really critical on the emergency preparedness side of having a good relationship with your local fire department and police department. Since you now have that information mobily stored and it's accurate and up to date, that's when you can work with them on an emergency preparedness almost calendar of these are up to date floor plans at the start of the school year. These are where the hydrants are, where our shutoffs are, and pass that information to them. Within the ARC Facilities app, you can have them have your local FD and PD contacts as users in here to just have visibility into it. But like you saw of being able to hit the send button and text or email that, that's another opportunity of how you can share information externally with your local first responders.
Great, thank you. Let's see, I have another question here. What my FLS team is great about updating plans and evacuation routes and giving us new binders. How do we put all these paper evacuation plans and routes in the app?
Gotcha. And FLS, I believe, is fire, life, and safety teams. So those are that kind of emergency support teams. That's great on them for creating all that new information. And when that information does become available, or whether it's physical or digital, that's the kind of information that can be quickly uploaded into your mobile software, whether it's adding in that new evacuation PDF or the new set of emergency contacts of the new principal, superintendent. If this is a K through 12, you'll be able to quickly upload that information into the mobile application so that everyone sees the newest and most up-to-date and relevant details.
Great. And another question I have here, would this help me with documenting things like inspections for extinguishers or defibrillators?
Yes. Like I showed a little bit earlier, you can add those different forms to your emergency assets, and that can be a customizable PDF form of all the standard operating steps of changing the battery, check mark, this was done, verified the siren, check mark, did it. That can support you on your team doing inspections or getting more visibility and accountability of those external vendors who are doing that for you. They can fill out those forms and that can be reported back up to you.
Great. Well, for any questions that came in that we happened to not get to, we will respond to you individually. If there are customers on the call with questions, we'll make sure to get back to you on any specific questions as well. We appreciate your attending this session. Rob, thank you so much for doing these webinars because a lot of people really do want to see more of what the ARC Facilities app can do. And this is such a great way for people to see that in a very short amount of time. So we are really looking forward to the next session. I think that will probably be, within the next month or two. We'll keep everybody posted. And just a reminder that we did record this. We will send an email with the recording link to all the registrants and a follow-up email in the next couple of days. So keep a lookout for that. Other than that, I want to thank everybody for attending. And Rob, thank you so much for a great session today.
Yes, I appreciate it. Thank you everyone for joining. And if you refer to the chat, there is that link to see if there is any more details. And if you want to set up a workshop with some of my colleagues to go into more detail about your campuses and your properties, our team will be more than happy to set that up. So thank you everyone for joining in this afternoon and look forward to talking soon.